Hi everyone, thanks for coming, and thank you to... I'm not tall enough, but I'm here. All our Zoom members. Thanks again to Robbie for inviting me and allowing me this opportunity for some research as well as some nostalgia. For those who don't know me, I worked at Birmingham University on the co-built Corpus lexicography project led by John Sinclair, full-time from 1984 to 1997, and then part-time at Birmingham and Wolverhampton from 1998 to 2003. I then worked full-time at Aston from 2004 to 2011, and finally in an honorary capacity until 2019. That's all I'm going to say about myself. One general point I just wanted to make at the beginning is when we talk about history, and this claims to be a brief history, history often focuses on events, and we often forget that most of those events are glimpses into much longer term underlying processes, and of course people who often in the current jargon in history become just more named entities. You know, like places, like dates, they're just another, oh, it's a real thing, you know, a referent. Whereas reality, we actually experience the other way. We participate in or witness processes, and the events are just the bits we show in public. But when telling a history, the narrative of those processes once again tends to get obscured behind the events as we link things up magically as if they all were intended. And one of the key distortions with history is time gets conflated. So processes actually take much longer than we think. Okay, enough of my spiel. So the history of Corpus Linguistics at Aston actually goes back to the late 1960s. There's a few pointers there. I'll leave the slides with Robbie, so any of you who want them can download them later. And if you have any detailed questions, rather than interrupting the flow of the conference, if you could contact Robbie and he'll contact me. I've got literally hundreds of documents relating to the early history, which is what I was fascinated in doing the research on. But he was interested in ESP, English for specific or special purposes, especially in scientific English. He was very connected with many, many organizations in looking at how technology could be used in classrooms, and he was part of the audiovisual language lab phase, which he didn't really approve of. And interestingly, in a 1985 paper, he talked a lot about CAL, computer-assisted language learning, and computers, but doesn't mention corpus. And also, he's already getting very cautious. He's saying, look, we need to develop the appropriate methods and software, not alienate users, and think of people in poorer countries. And we started distance learning masters here at Aston in 1994. Okay, another bit of brief history. This is a bit more of the intervening period. It wasn't just English, he was also looking at German and also the language of finance. And he was joined by Chris Gledhill, who did his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees here, but specializing in French, but started also using Corpus. And he really organized the first two public events. So you can see from 1969 to 96, very few people knew what was going on. 96 was the first Aston Corpus Symposium, and you can see it's got a mostly national attendance, national speakers, rather. Whereas 1997, the second symposium, is very much got a European flavor. So that shows how the progress is taking place. The English department started off initially as the language support unit, focusing on teaching, and then they launched the on-campus masters. Then we come briefly to my part in the story, and I've put John Sinclair and Wolfgang Teubert up there, even though they were never part of Aston, because they were my main influencers, using again the current jargon. I worked with John for, 20 years or so, and with Wolfgang for about 10. And of course, another major influence on me was Malcolm Coulthard. Again, I never worked closely with him, but we were good friends, and I was especially interested in the development of forensic linguistics, which I'll mention again later. So this was broadly the team that we had. There was me and Mike Scott, who's also here, and my first PhD student, Istok, who's now the head of the Slovenian Institute of Languages or something like that, Lizzie Tanguay, who's teaching somewhere in Wales, and Mike, I'm sure you can find out all about on the internet. So there was a big transition in 2004 because most of the LSU staff left. It was me, Sue Garton, Noor, who's also here, and Muna, I think, were the four starting off again. And the software that I inherited was something called ATA, and you can see from the specifications here the kind of computers that our students had access to, which is what we were catering for. And then, of course, during that period, all these other programs, including Mike's Wordsmith tools, came online. It was a very busy period from 2004 to 11. There was a lot of teaching going on. We not only did the distance masters, we initiated the on-campus BSc, on-campus masters, on-campus, and in several different strands of linguistics. I set up the Acorn project, so we had a 10 million word corpus in 4 languages, plus another section for translation studies with parallel text. We had symposia, so I think I call them numbers 1, 2, and 3, but I suppose technically there should be 3, 4, and 5 in 2007 to 2009. We added a postgraduate conference, so all the postgraduates from everywhere could show their work. Added the summer schools, which became quite popular, and we installed the first digital teaching labs with digital management tools. And there was a lot of collaboration with, I did some work with Guadalupe on Spanish grammar, with Pierre on contrastive French and English grammar, Sylvia, who's now at Reading, on feminism, Gertrude, who we did a joint project with Leipzig and Wrocław, English, Polish and German, on academic spoken language. Rainer Grundmann, that was a paper that's being widely read. He's now a professor at Nottingham, I think. We looked at climate change through the discourse. And then I had joint PhD supervisions with people in computer science. They were also getting interested in the linguistics as opposed to the mathematics. We put out funding proposals and participated in all the usual academic activities. Now to the post my close involvement period, forensic linguistics, meanwhile, had absolutely exploded. It was very, very, we were the first university, I think, in the world to appoint Malcolm as a professor of forensic linguistics. I don't think there was any other. All of his team, himself notably, but also people like Tim, were constantly in the news because they were solving crimes that could only be solved by linguistics. For instance, a murderer continues to send text messages on behalf of the murdered person to friends and family. But by close inspection of the language, Tim and his team were able to tell that this was being sent after a certain time by a different person, because all of our personal ways of using any device are unique to us. So it's a bit like fingerprints. And then Gary took over my position here, And I think that was the last time I physically appeared here at the Corpus SIG Symposium. And I was very happy to come because it was in honour of a great friend and colleague, Adam Kilgariff, who sadly passed away far too young. My official connection ended in 2019, but I've been following Robbie's career very closely over the last 18 months, and I'm very pleased to know that the tradition is continuing. Thank you all very much.